arrival was almost unspeakable.
We are all evil in some form or another. I'm not guilty.
The dead won't bother you. It's the living you gotta worry about.
If I couldn't keep them there with me whole, at least I felt that I could keep their skeletons.
Welcome to the Bad Taste Crime Podcast. I'm Rachel.
I'm Vicky.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
We're back again.
Are you here to learn about crime?
Not how to do it.
Oh my God. Well, about it.
Just not how to do it.
Yeah, this is not an instructional.
No.
That's after this one.
We're educational, but not in that way.
Yeah. We don't condone murder.
Never.
Don't do that.
No, never. How are you today, Rachel?
I'm doing good.
Good.
I'm doing good.
Good.
It's like really gross outside.
It is. It's been like humid.
Ugh.
Gross and humid. I'm having that issue right now where like my windows are fogging up because it's so humid, but then I turn the air on and the outside of them gets all condensation.
So annoying.
Then you have to turn it off, but then it gets foggy on the inside. I'm like, I don't know what to do about this.
Yup.
I've never known what the proper cold to hot air ratio is in my car.
No clue.
To avoid that.
And we're both girls with glasses. So like when you step out of your car into the parking lot and it's like I'm blind for 3 minutes.
Friday. So I play volleyball on Fridays.
Yeah.
And it's like a rec league, so it's not as intense. So instead of wearing contacts, I'll wear my glasses sometimes. Okay. So I was wearing my glasses on Friday, and like just being outside and playing volleyball was fogging them up.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, because I'm like hot and sweaty, and it was like gross and humid outside. So they were like fogging up. It was crazy.
I'm ready for fall. How about you?
Same.
Yeah.
I am perpetually ready for fall.
Of course. Yeah. Yes.
Pumpkin Spice comes out in 2. It's going to be.
I'm so excited.
It will be out by the time this episode releases, but it hasn't come out yet. So we're very excited.
I got pumpkin spice coffee creamer. That's good enough for me.
If this is your first time listening, a special hello to you.
Hi.
We are going to head over to the newsroom.
Unfit to breathe, our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad.
Okay, so this week, our news comes from KTLA 5. This guy, Antonio Riano,
Okay.
who has been one of Ohio's most wanted fugitives for nearly 20 years, got arrested.
Oh.
He's wanted in the shooting death of Benjamin Becerra in Butler County, Ohio. This happened in 2004.
Wow.
Okay, so August 1st, what did I say his name? Antonio Riano was arrested in his hometown of Zapotitlan, Palamas, state of Oaxaca, Mexico. Oaxaca, Mexico. Sure. Where he was working as none other than a police officer.
Oh my God. Shocker. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm shocked.
He's been profiled on America's Most Wanted. He's now 72, but like I said, he's been wanted since 2004.
Wow. And they got him.
Mm-hmm. They got him
crazy.
working as a police officer.
Dumb.
Isn't that crazy?
That's like in Les Miserables, where after he goes to jail, he's like, well, I guess I'll become the mayor of this town now that I'm running from the law. I'm
sure.
Like, why don't you do something a little less public?
Conspicuous?
Right.
Yeah. So he's accused of shooting Becerra in the face after an argument.
Jeez.
Yeah. He has just been living in Mexico working as a police officer, but he did get arrested with help of the U.S. Marshals in the U.S. Department of Justice's Office of International Affairs and local police.
Wow.
He had his first court appearance, but he's currently sitting in jail awaiting trial. I don't know if he's taken like a plea or anything. This just happened, so probably hasn't gotten that far. But it's wild to me that you just like worked as a police officer in another.
Me too.
Another country.
Like, why? For what?
Also, how did they... So the article that I found just said he had been arrested, but I'm curious how they found him. Like if
Me too.
one of his colleagues turned
That's
him
what
in.
I was thinking.
Or, because, that is kind of like an inside scoop kind of deal.
It sounds like a movie. Like, it would be funny if a bunch of like criminals that he sent to jail like all got together and were like, actually, doesn't he look like this one guy who's missing? And they like...
Right.
I'm writing fan fiction at this point. I love that.
And do they, I mean, he's going to have to keep it a secret when he goes to jail that he was a cop.
Oh, yeah.
Because I feel like it's probably not as easy to tell, like, a cop from another country from, like, an American cop. Sometimes you're like, that guy's a cop. Like, it's clear, like, that guy's a fucking cop.
I have capo-vision. I will find you.
Yeah. So that's interesting.
That is interesting.
We're going to move on to Netflix and Kill, which this week is a Max and Kill.
Love Max.
I'm finally getting around to watching some of the old stuff that I haven't watched. Movie Pass Movie Crash.
Oh.
This is about movie. Do you remember Movie Pass?
No.
Okay. So I'm kind of surprised. Movie Pass was this company that was started by two African-American founders, Stacy Spikes and Hamet Watt. They decided to start this company that would allow people to pay a fee every month and then go see as many movies as they wanted to.
Oh, yeah.
So it was like in
the subscription. Yeah.
Kind of, but it was an actual card. You got a Movie Pass like credit card almost. And the way it worked is you would go to a movie theater, you would check in from that movie theater, you could see what movies were available, you'd select a movie. Movie Pass would essentially preload your card so then you could go pay your movie. That's kind of how it worked. But you paid them a monthly fee of, I think in the beginning it was like $30, like $25 or $30 to go see an unlimited number of movies per month.
I mean, that sounds great.
Sounds great. Company started doing well in the beginning. People really latched onto it. It was definitely this large effort to get people back into the theaters.
Yeah.
Because this is height of the streaming wars and all that kind of stuff. Because this would have been in like mid 2000s, I think is when the company was started.
Yeah.
So they start getting bigger. The company's sort of hemorrhaging money.
Yeah.
They bring in another investor that becomes a third partner with them to sort of supplement some of the income. They end up bringing in these two. One of them's definitely a venture capitalist.
Okay.
The other one he's like some sort of business guy. These two business guys who are like long-time business guys. The issue is they come in, were like hemorrhaging money from the company, started to try to take the company in a bunch of ways, starting its own movie production business. They were just like spending thousands.
That sounds expensive.
Millions on these parties, these lavish promotional parties and things at Coachella and this and this and this. All the meanwhile just like hemorrhaging money or whatever.
So there's some fraud going on.
There is like, so at that point I don't think there was. But there is this rift that happens when there's a disagreement between the two original Black founders and the three venture capitalist white guys. And they essentially oust them from the company. They say you get to keep all of your stocks and stuff. They keep all their stock options. And I'm sure they got some sort of severance package.
Yeah, but like, oh my God.
It's their company. Yeah. They made it and then they were ousted. But the thing is they can't cash their stocks for 1 year. They have 1 year like holding period. In the meantime, these guys are just completely demolishing this company. And they are starting to intentionally mess with the app so that frequent users are not able to take advantage of the services the company provides.
Dicks.
So it'd be things like intentionally blacking out movies or turning the location off so that there wasn't anything available.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's shitty.
Yeah. So all in all, company goes bankrupt.
Yeah,
there is kind of a bright side to the story because one of the original founders, when the company went bankrupt, it went up for auction, and he came back in and decided to repurchase it and has rebuilt Movie Pass. It does exist today.
That's nice.
It's not as cheap. They had eventually gotten it down to like $10 per month, which is part of the reason why they were hemorrhaging money.
Well, of course.
And the two guys that were in charge of it were under investigation for fraud on the consumer side because they were intentionally on the back end blacking out dates, making the app not work, basically making it so people were not able to take advantage of these services that they are paying for. So they're under investigation currently. That I think I'm not sure if the trial has gone forward. I think they're still awaiting trial.
That's crazy.
It's a very interesting story.
Yeah.
This one I really like because it's a documentary, so it's like an hour and a half long. Mm-hmm. It's very manageable. Mm-hmm. It's really, really interesting just from a business perspective because these guys really came in, and the guy who is like the main venture capitalist guy that came in is like kind of a shady past with like promoting all these businesses that did kind of terrible. And really his power was like charisma and like plus selling it to people, you know.
Ew. I hate a venture capitalist.
Yeah. It's an interesting watch though.
Yeah.
Because there is also this sort of undercurrent of like people of color in business. That's what I was going to say.
And like how can they oust them from their own company? Yeah. Like that's so disgusting.
But it's called Movie Pass, Movie Crash. It's on Max.
Yeah.
Definitely check out. This is that part of the show where we say content may not be appropriate for all listeners. May not be appropriate for all listeners. This week we will be discussing murder.
Yes, mine definitely has some murder. It's pretty light.
Yeah, I will say mine does involve child murder. I know that's not your thing.
It's not.
But you're going to find this case very interesting.
Okay.
I tried to make it a really small piece. So
cool.
Yeah. But just a heads up to the rest of you that that aren't in the room and don't have to be here right now.
You're all with us in spirit.
Rachel's like, please get me out of here.
Help me.
So what are we covering today, Rachel?
We are covering, okay, so I feel like with true crime, everybody has like little like niche interests. Like you like all the legal stuff. I like interrogations. I've always been really interested in forensics.
Yes.
Like super interesting.
Yeah.
Which kind of sucks because when I was younger, a bright and gorgeous child with deeply macabre interests, I was drawn to the forensic side of true crime because it appeared to be infallible.
Okay.
Like people can lie.
I get that.
And it's like math, it's like, well, the numbers are there. Like data doesn't lie. Like that's what I liked about it. Because many cases have obviously suffered due to like mundane human error or people lying. Like remember when in the infamous Jack the Ripper case, he or she, which I don't believe, sent some of the internal organs of one of their victims to like either the police station or the newspaper, because he would write all these like, I am Jack the Ripper, me, letters. So he sent the news station like one of the victims' like kidneys, and they fucking lost it.
Okay.
Like, did the canine unit eat it? I don't know. So like,
oh God,
that's one of that's what I feel. Either that or they were like, oh, steak kidney pie, yum yum. When people. I'm fired.
Veto.
Like when people are surprised that the Jack the Ripper case was never solved, I'm like, they lost like a bunch of the original letters. They bungled that thing so bad that case will never be solved.
It was also just during a time period where the standards were not the same.
Well, completely. But it's also like you'd think you'd want to hang on to that.
You'd think so, but there are parts of me that I'm like, as a person living in that era, would you even fathom that? Like
that's fair. That's super fair.
That things would progress in such a way.
That's true.
That would become useful. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to give them a pass. You're absolutely right. They could lose a bunch of shit.
But you're right too. I'm definitely too hard. They're like, oh, it's an organ. Gross. Throw it away. Yeah. Get this off my desk.
We can use this for meat. My poor family. No protein.
Help me, sir. Help me. But data, including things like fingerprints, blood spatter, and like DNA evidence, seemed to be like no room for error.
Oh, my naive sweet summer child.
I know.
My sweet summer child.
And that's what I mean. Now, of course, these systems are always changing. And sadly, as you well know, she's over there laughing, many forensic methods have been proved to be more infested with human error than previously thought.
Yeah. If you're a longtime listener of the show, we've definitely done episodes on junk science.
Crazy.
Because especially now, and even within the last like 5 years, there's been a lot of things that have just been proven to be not as end all be all as we thought.
Right.
For sure.
Because I always like there's always those things in those cases where you're like, okay, what's going to be like the smoking gun? And sometimes it's like, okay, the fingerprint.
the
there's a
lie
fingerprint
detector.
there.
The polygraph. I used to put so much stock in polygraphs, and I've grown, and I'm like,
see, I get it, but this is real. The first like quote unquote polygraph was literally just a copy machine with like a bunch of shit pasted to it, and they would print when they thought the person was lying, they would have it print a paper that was like, "You're fucking lying," and they'd be like, "Oh no!" So I'm like, if they lied back then, they can lie now,
right?
Like, you know. And there's been people who have beaten the test who they proved with other evidence that they did it. Yeah. So I'm like, I didn't know
this was before I knew all of that.
No, I'm not shading you. No. Oh my god,
you know
are you
what I
kidding?
mean? It used to be like, he didn't pass polygraph. He's lying for sure.
Did you ever watch those like Maury and like Steve Wilkos? Yes. So, absolutely. Every time that show, even
still
though
my favorite.
And even though now I'm like the lie detector,
that was a lie.
I'm like 100%. It was a lie. All my knowledge goes out the window. Those are so good. But I'm still a sucker for an open and shut case solved by determination and good old hard work. So I love when like one piece of something can like solve a case.
Yeah.
So today's case takes place in the Philippines on a military base where Joe Snodgrass, very cool name, just kidding, it's lame, worked as a U.S. military officer on Clark Air Force Base near Manila.
Okay.
So he was from the U.S. and this is where he was living now. His wife, Julie, who they'd met in the United States and moved to the Philippines for his work.
Okay.
Was described by all who knew her as someone who was warm and kind, although she, being a born and bred American, had a little bit of trouble adjusting to her new life as a military spouse in a foreign country. As one does.
Right.
And this uncertainty apparently led to trouble in Joe and Julie's marriage, as on February 25th, 1991, Joe called local police to report that after what he described as a run-of-the-mill fight, his wife was now missing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yikes. How do you go missing on a military base?
That was my thought.
Okay.
Right. This is like a direct quote from like, I think when he called 911, he said, "I thought she was going to go cool off, okay?" Totally fine. Totally normal.
Okay.
Sure, she's fine. Military records showed, because of course, as you just mentioned, it's a military base. So like they are aware of things that are happening on the base.
Yeah.
They showed that Julie had indeed left the base around 10:30 the night before, but had not returned.
Okay.
And that's what he said. He's like, we had a fight. She stormed out, drove away. I don't know where she went.
Okay.
So she's missing.
But they had a record of her actually leaving the base.
Yeah, I think you have to like
sign in, sign out. Probably.
Yeah, because this is the 70s, so I'm not sure like it like what the procedure was.
It
but
honestly had to be like a sign in, sign out.
I'm
sheet.
sure it was like a clipboard.
Yeah.
Or like somebody in
Name,
like a
address.
Like, what's that? Like a little toll booth thing being like,
yeah.
"Oh,
yes.
Hi, Julie.
100%.
Joe's pissing you off again. All right, see you later." But it wasn't a lengthy investigation, as unfortunately the next morning at 4 a.m., a cab driver discovered Julie's lifeless body still inside her truck on an empty dirt road only 2 miles from the base.
Okay.
She had been stabbed repeatedly. This was huge overkill. They said the inside of the car was like flooded. Like there was a ton of blood.
Oh my God. So was she in like the driver's seat?
Yes.
Okay.
So the door was like, I think propped open, but she was still in the car.
Okay.
So I'm not sure how she didn't quite fall out. And her seatbelt had been on while she was driving, but she had taken it off because she was stabbed.
Yeah.
While she was being stabbed. So they were like, obviously she was trying to get away, and there hadn't been anyone in the car with her when she had left. So they're like, because she like took her seatbelt off, they were like, she was trying to get away from this person right away.
Yeah.
So she probably didn't know this person.
Yeah.
They also found dark hairs inside the car, which did not initially seem to match Julie or her husband. They were both like blonde.
Okay.
And they're in the Philippines, so it's darker hair. Yeah. I'm just saying. The car's location was also suspicious. The area where the dirt road was located was in an area restricted to the public. Nothing like super crazy. It's just military-based stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it was probably a work road. Julie, a military wife of many years, would have known not to go there. There's also nothing over there.
Okay.
So it's like, for what?
Yeah.
The murder weapon, a cheap folding knife, was found covered in blood, discarded in a field next to the road. And then they discovered when they looked in the car that Julie's purse, along with some other valuables, were missing.
Okay.
Investigators, as they usually do, started by looking a little more closely at Joe and Julie's marriage, and there was a lot to uncover.
Oh, boy.
The couple had been, and they had a baby.
Okay.
They had a baby boy. I forgot to mention. I forgot what his name is.
Okay.
But they had been separated plenty of times, and they'd actually, at one point, had gone so far as to divorce and then get remarried.
Okay. That's not, I'm starting to realize that is a little more common than I would have thought.
I was about to say.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like a couple years ago, I would have been like, who does that? But I'm like, people do that.
Yeah. And I know there's a people change thing, right? And there is something to be said for like familiarity of a partner.
Yeah.
Especially if you already have kids or whatever.
Right.
But you said they had a baby, so they probably didn't have kids before the first divorce. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
But it's just-
Interesting. I mean, it's a choice for sure.
And I mean, they were both
It's a choice.
like pretty young
Yeah.
as well. So it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
They needed to find themselves.
They needed to find something else to do because this was not a good time.
Yeah.
Someone who was always close by to hear all of the fighting and bickering was the couple's young, attractive housekeeper, a Filipino local named Lucy.
Okay.
So she was like super close, maybe a little too close.
Like the sexy kind of close.
Yeah, she's like, dusting and like, ooh, my booty.
Oh.
Falling out of my makeup.
Oops, I forgot to wear underwear today.
Oopsies, I'm just so absent-minded.
So demure.
Very demure, very mindful. So right away, cops brought Lucy in, and we're talking to her, and we're kind of like, all right, like, he's a little bit older than you. She was like in her early 20s. Okay. They were like, all right, girl, like, you're young and hot. What's going on? And after a little while, she actually ends up confessing. And she's like, yes, Joe and I have been having an affair.
Cool.
I actually read a lot of the information that I got from this case is from an interview with the couple's child, who's all grown up now.
Yeah.
And it's a crazy interview. It's really sad. And he said, because he was like a little boy at this time, like through the years, that she would be like, I'm your mom. I'm your mother. Like, even before his mother was dead.
Sure.
She'd be like, I'm your mom now. And he'd be like, no. Like, and he wasn't even like supposed to know that they were together. Like, so she wanted in.
Okay.
She wanted
so
in.
She's like conditioning him for the future.
Right. I thought that's like a weird little detail,
weird.
but I thought that was like gross.
That's weird.
I'm like, that's creepy.
Yeah.
You're a weirdo. Like, have your own kid.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Freak. But initially before I mixed it around a little bit. So before she does confess, she did pass a polygraph. As we said earlier, junk science.
Right.
So the next time they interviewed her, this is where I messed it up. The first time they interviewed her, they used American investigators.
Okay.
And she was a native Filipino. And there was a lot of mistrust at that time between the military base and the locals.
Okay. Did she spoke English though, right?
Yes, she did.
So it wasn't like a translation.
No, but
thing.
it was, I think, kind of an intimidation thing. A lot of the locals did not trust the military base. I'm taking your advice and I'm being neutral, so I'm just not saying too much. But, there was
growth. Look at you growing.
There was some
growing,
tension.
learning.
I'm like gnawing my own arm off. I'm like, I want to talk shit. But the next time they kind of sussed that out and they put in Filipino investigators. So I think that I'm not saying
smart.
Right.
I mean,
and I don't mean in a negative way. Like, of course, she would be like a little more comfortable.
Yeah.
And she did end up making.
Well, depending what they're doing there. I mean.
Right.
Listen, let's be real. Like, the U.S. military shows up. It's never for
Right.
something that great.
Right. Exactly. And she's already in this town where there's a lot of friction. So it's kind of like you're the invader, you know? Mm-hmm. So when it's like, oh, these are just, you know, two guys, it's like, okay.
Sure.
And police departments will do that all the time with all kinds of stuff, trying to make it easier to get a confession. And obviously it worked because Lucy described how Joe had come to her and said, I can't live with my wife. I want her out of the way, because they wanted the child. They didn't want to have to fight custody.
Okay.
That was kind of like the whole thing.
Yeah.
So Joe was like, which I'm like, all right, you're in the military. So you would think you would use some kind of military stuff to murder your wife because you have like probably a whole shed of like weapons and drones, etc. But he was like, no, actually, sexy housekeeper, can you help me? And she was like, oh, sure, no problem. So she hired her two uncles to carry out the murder.
Okay.
This is like a weird little detail. There was also a third man who the uncles hired like to help them out. Okay. I don't know if it's because, I think it's probably because of Filipino law in some way. It seems something like that. Yeah. Or
I've seen that before where they like, they almost like outsourced the job that they got. Yeah. Where it was like, I don't remember how long we covered this, but it was like a husband and wife couple were getting revenge for something. And so they had asked their nephew, and then the nephew, they said, can you kill this guy for me? And the nephew went like, to somebody else and was like, hey, I'll pay you X amount of money. So you're just like outsourcing your hit, essentially. And
that's exactly what
I have definitely seen that before. And I don't, maybe it is just like in their mind, you know, it's like 6 degrees of separation. Right. Then I am not, if and I don't have as close, I'm not as like,
and I mean, it's just like why didn't Joe kill his own wife? You know, why are you trying to get 700 other people to do it? And the identity, though, of the man that they supposedly hired has never been either released or they don't know. All of the articles were like really unclear. So I don't know if it's one of those.
And okay, I'm sorry if I missed this, but did the husband have anything to do with it? It was just the housekeeper that
he told her he was like, we're going to kill my wife.
Okay. So
but I don't want to do it. And you're not going to do it. Do you know any, you know, tough people? And she was like, my uncles. They'll do it.
I know some guys.
Yeah. She's like, of course.
I got guys for that.
Of course
I got guys for this, guys for that.
I got guys for everything. He's like, whoa.
That's like my landlord anyway.
Love that. Love that for you.
No shade. All shade.
She's like, I know.
He's got a guy for everything. It's a fucking
I feel like everybody knows someone like that where it's like, if I just need something crazy, I know where to find it. I know a guy. He's like Mike Ehrmantraut.
Yeah, I'm kind of like that with certain things. It kind of depends. I know people.
I love that. I know people. I know some guys.
I used to know more guys, but I don't know as many guys anymore.
It's good to not know guys. Fuck them.
Life is easier that way.
It really, literally is.
I don't know anybody. I just stay home, sleep, play video games. I don't need to know anybody.
Me too. That's all I do. I mean, I guess I take care of my children every.
Oh yeah,
so
those.
Often. I get
the children.
Who cares? So she makes this full confession, but all she really has is her word. So they're like, well, you lied the first time. Are you making it up now for some reason? Like, who do we believe? So they went to Joe and he was like, nuh-uh. No, I didn't do that. No. And they were like, well, then we'll search your house. And he's like, go for it.
Okay.
Go for it. And he's like, she also house cleans. So it's like so clean in there.
Yeah.
So immediately
but also, of course, her DNA is going to be all over because she cleans.
Of course.
In the house anyway.
Well, right. So, but I mean, they're not really proving the affair. Yeah. Which he also denied. But like, they're like, okay, obviously you killed your wife. And he's like, nuh-uh. No, I said it.
Okay.
So if you were like a murderer and you had to hide like important paperwork and you were dumb, where would you hide it?
In my desk drawer.
Desk drawer is good. They found a bunch of insurance policies under a mattress.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Also, just a life tip. from someone who used to work in a hardware store. Don't store anything under your mattress because you know what's under your mattress is probably mold.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
When you
Cool.
sweat and stuff at night, all that bacteria, you should actually check the bottom of your mattress regularly to prevent mold. Up next on our mold podcast.
Actually, but that makes, now that you say it, it makes sense.
So if you put papers between that and the bottom part.
Well, that's the thing is a
collect
lot of
moisture.
beds now don't have a box spring. They're just on a platform that has openings on the bottom.
Right.
It's just the slats on the bottom.
Oh,
Instead of a box spring that covers the whole thing where you're not getting any airflow. So I wonder if that makes a difference too.
That's probably true. So if you have a new bed, you're fine. But
or if you just don't, because I don't say mine's a platform bed with no box spring.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Yeah.
I actually prefer that.
Yeah, I love that.
Box spring is just an extra expense.
Yeah, who cares? That's dumb.
Yeah.
But yeah, don't hide your shady insurance papers under your mattress because they will get water damage. Yeah, get a safe and then lock the safe.
Or
and then they
a
can't
locking
open it.
filing cabinet even would be.
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I don't have either of those.
The police aren't allowed to unlock your shit without a warrant. So get a locking box.
I have a manila envelope with all my
I love that. This was your manila. I bet all of their envelopes are manila envelopes. That's cute. I love that. And he was like, "Ooh, you found those insurance policies, huh? Uh-oh." Joe had recently increased the his wife's life insurance to over $400,000.
Okay, that's not suspicious at all.
Yeah. And he's in the military. So they were like, I mean, we don't have to go far. We're just going to go search your fucking desk. You said earlier, desk drawer.
Desk drawer.
So this was 1991.
Okay.
So they found a bunch of floppy disks. This is dating this podcast. Floppy disks.
I mean, you probably had this too, but I had the little plastic container that had all my floppy disks in it for school.
Oh yeah. My dad still has it on his desk. It's cute. So those big 5.25-inch ones, the big ones. So they found a couple of those. They were like, what's on these floppy disks? Very interesting. And this is so this was on Forensic Files. This is how I know about this case. Love Forensic Files.
Me too.
And I wonder if there was a little bit, this seems like, oh my gosh, how did this crazy thing I'm about to say happen? And it's was it negligence or was it maybe he had friends at work who, kind of helped him. You know what I mean?
Well, what happened?
So they were like, okay, we found these floppy disks and they were on your desk. But in an office, sometimes things go on your desk that aren't yours.
Right.
So we have to find out if these are actually his before we can look into it. Mm-hmm. So they were in an interrogation room, I guess. And they brought him the discs and we're like, hey, are these yours? And he's like, I don't know, let me see. And he's in the police station, I think under arrest at this point because they're talking to him, at least detained.
Yeah.
And he pulls out of his pocket a pair of what's called pinking shears.
Okay.
Which are scissors. And he snips the floppy disks into a bazillion pieces.
What?
Yep. So obviously they are no, and trying to get it away, but it's they were in a lot of pieces. I'm like, how did you let him stand there and cut them all up?
Wow. That is
how did that happen?
Crazy.
It was 2 floppy disks. How did that happen?
I wonder if because he's military, he wasn't searched as thoroughly.
That's what I'm wondering. And I mean,
because this would not be happening at a U.S. Police. This would have to be Philippines police if the murder took place outside of the base. So these are not I'm curious to know if that's the case because to me, even though it is an American,
it seemed like both of them
they were working together.
Yes.
Okay. Well, they did if they had to have access to search his house and whatever.
Yeah.
But it would, I think, fall under jurisdiction of Philippine law because it happened outside of the base, which is technically Philippine.
That's very true.
Land.
I don't know.
So maybe it depends on if the interrogation was taking place on the base or if it was outside because I feel like the security procedures are very different.
That's very true. That's very true.
And if it's outside, especially, I could see that because you're a military member, we're not going to search you as hard or we're just going to especially if he was coming in voluntarily for questioning.
Right.
Yeah.
Which it's when someone comes in under suspicion for murder, they're just a murder suspect. It doesn't matter if they're captain, whoever. Whatever. So though that was like devastating for the case. They really, really wanted these floppy disks. And they were like, oh man, we can't use these now. What?
They didn't look at them before.
No, because they wanted to ask him if they were his. That's what I don't understand. I'm like, why wouldn't you just plug it in? And if
that sounds like negligence.
Right. That's what I think.
Yeah, that
like,
sounds
you had a
like
pair
negligence.
of scissors. Like, come on, dude.
Yeah.
Like, what a weird thing to have if you didn't know what they were about to find. Mm-hmm. Like, that's a little stinky. Mm-hmm. So they were like, oh man. So again, this is 1991.
Sure.
So they were kind of like, well, we don't have that anymore. That is sad that we don't have that evidence. But they were like, maybe we can try to put them back together. Mm-hmm. So they started this whole thing. I thought this was so interesting. So they collected the pieces and they sent them to the U.S. military's brand new computer forensics laboratory. So it's this high tech thing, and they're like, "Oh, no problem." And they sent them back.
All right, America.
Right, and it's this huge thing, and they were just like, "Return to sender. What the fuck are we supposed to do with these? We can't do that." They were like, "No, we can't do that. What do you think we're gonna do?"
Yeah.
He says, okay, one of the investigators says, okay, I'm not a magician. I'm a computer crime investigator. What are we going to do? They
Rude.
couldn't, at that time, they couldn't find a single instance of someone like successfully repairing a floppy disk to be able to recover the information.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it's literally cut, because it's just like a ribbon on the inside of those.
Yeah. And it's just like plastic.
Plastic and like a readable ribbon
for
that
you
holds all
young
the
people.
information.
Yeah. For you young people who are listening. It's like, I almost said it's like a CD. That won't be helpful.
No.
If you held it in your hands, you could snap it.
Yeah.
Pretty easily.
Yeah.
Like, it's not super, super strong.
Yeah. In fact, I'd say it's easier to snap than a CD.
I would think so. Oh, yeah. Because CD is like bendy.
Yeah.
Totally. So the big crime lab was like, nope. And they were like, if you even want us to try, it's going to be over $1 million.
Damn.
And they're like, I mean, they're the military, but this is a small case.
Right.
So they're like, shit, well, we don't have $1 million. Okay.
I have $1 million to investigate a murder.
Which you would think. I'm like, hello? Like, it's a human life.
Right.
They were trying to call everybody. They were going to the private sector. They were going to the government. They were pulling out all of the stops. And this was over almost a year where they were just trying to figure out and all of these people were either just sending it back or saying, if you even want us to look at it, it will be like $1 bazillion.
Which I can't help but feeling, had this happened on the base,
yeah.
One, it would be more scandalous.
Right.
But two, because it's more scandalous, I feel like they would be putting forth more of an effort because it'd be the U.S. government investigating it. Mm-hmm. So like...
And I think that might...
And because it's like outside and they're trying to investigate a military member, they maybe, I'm not saying I'm not like that much of a conspiracy theorist to say everybody was in, I know, that everybody was in cahoots together, but like, I do think that presented some maybe roadblocks that possibly wouldn't have been there had it happened on the base versus on Philippines.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, he's this military member and she's found on this road where it's like all of a sudden you're not in jurisdiction. So it's like, sneaky.
Yeah.
So on Forensic Files, when they're talking about this floppy disk, I loved it. So this whole department is like all these like old grizzled like military members, and this is new technology to them, and they're like, oh my God. And the like lead of the investigation was in a car with like a brand new like, I want to say deputy, but that's not right. Like a brand new like little guy. And he was like confiding in this younger man who had just started on the case and was like, man, I don't know what we're going to do because I swear I know that these floppy disks have information on them and we can't get access to them. And that sucks. And we don't have the money and I don't know what to do. And the deputy, Deputy Hutchins was his name. He was like, well, do you want me to take a crack at it? And he was like, the FBI can't do it. What do you mean you're going to take a crack at it? Like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, I just figured I'd tape them back together.
Right. I'm like, did you try taping them though? That was my first thought.
Of course they didn't. They just sent it to the FBI. And he was like, that's not going to work But you know what? We literally have nothing left.
Sure.
So go ahead.
Yeah.
So he was like, okay. So he was thinking he got his idea from like a Post-it note because when it's removed, it leaves no residue.
Yeah.
He was worried that would clog up the machine.
Sure.
So this is like this whole process. First, these technicians used heat to try to smooth out like the crumpled pieces.
Okay.
But they couldn't all be repaired. So they were trying to like make a template of the disc and tape it on the backside. At one point, he had taped it. He had done that. He had kind of taped it back together with that same like Post-it glue. And they put it in a computer and the disc broke the computer. It broke the head off of the disk drive and flung it across the room.
Oh, that's funny.
So
sounds about right.
They said everybody in the office turned around. Like the computer's like, get this out of my sight.
Yeah.
So they needed to find a thinner tape with the same adhesive properties. So their research led to, because they started calling like all of these tape and glue and adhesive companies, led to a brand of Scotch tape called 811.
Okay.
It doesn't leave a residue. So they used it to piece it together, and to their enormous relief, it was a success.
Wow.
The project that they said would cost close to $1 million had only cost $131.
Wow.
So I hope that dude gets
Claps
like
to him for good policing.
Yes, completely. And also expensive. That included $50 for the first disk drive that we destroyed.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, please.
Fair.
So like, what a cool, like, investigative. I love that so much because they were so
That's very
afraid
clever.
that
Very
they
clever.
weren't, right, that they weren't going to do it. And then just this like Gomer Pyle, like little nobody is like, I'll take a crack at it, Sergeant.
Gomer Pyle.
Yeah, he was like really cute and like Southern. I'm like, I love. So what was on these dreaded floppy disks? Well, everything.
Porn.
No.
Okay.
Well, maybe. But, I mean, if there was, they didn't mention it. On one of them was a portion of a letter Joe had written to Lucy asking her to hire some hitmen to kill his wife.
Just a straight up letter.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is it like the actual letter, like written out, or is it like a typed?
It's on the
letter?
floppy disk.
Okay, but is it like an image of it, or is it like the typed letter from like a Word document?
I think they just found it in the computer.
Okay, move on.
Wait, I don't know what you're asking me.
Like a handwritten letter that was scanned in and saved as an image, or like a Word document of like typed "Dear so and so and so."
Sure, I'm actually not sure. I have the what was in the letter.
Look at it later.
My bad.
No, you're good. I was like, wait a second, you're not understanding.
I wasn't.
Because I'm thinking, if it's like a handwritten letter, it takes extra effort to scan it into the fucking computer.
That's very true. I bet it was like an email.
You think it was like an email?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I'm pretty sure it was
to?
an email. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
And I have the actual letter, so I'm going to read it. So this is the letter that he wrote to his housekeeper. At least 10 times a day, I say a prayer that you will have luck down there finding someone. I talked to my kid, and he is starting to get real tired of her also, which like, fuck you. The kid is a little baby at this point.
Sure.
We went out last night and it was just not the same without you there. Please help me with her and come back soon. If you need anything else, let me know and I will try to send it to you. I have to go back to work now. I love and miss you, Joe. And they were like, okay, anyway.
Oh God.
You're literally a murderer.
Yeah.
So on the floppy disk was like everything. It was his communication to Lucy, and then it was her communication with her uncles, and then it was like the uncle's communication with the other guy. He had more copies of the insurance documents.
So he just had this saved on a floppy disk.
Yeah, this was
had
like
a label that said murder stuff.
I'm guessing it was 2 floppy disks, and it was all of the murder stuff.
Murder stuff do not touch.
Yeah, I guess.
Or like labeled as like childhood photos, but actually it's murder stuff.
Wouldn't you think? Or like, put a little skull and crossbones on it.
Yeah, right.
Do not enter.
Yeah.
Something that also, so they brought that now they could they knew who the actual killers were, the uncles. And so they brought the uncles in and were interviewing them. They both confessed and gave full statements in the face of the overwhelming evidence.
Oh my gosh.
And this is like a really sad detail because he'd hired them, right? So he should have paid them some money.
Oh no.
$150.
That's it?
That's it.
Wow. What a cheap ass.
That's it. Plus 1,000 pesos for transportation, which is
Still
nothing. Pesos is like very small.
Yeah, well, it's Filipino pesos, so I'm not sure what the exchange rate is, to be
I
honest
don't know
with you.
either, but that guy's a dick.
Yeah.
Don't murder people and don't cheat people when they murder your wife for you. Come on, lazy. Snodgrass, who by this time was a sergeant, pled guilty to soliciting his wife's murder.
Wow. For outsourcing. Guilty of outsourcing.
For outsourcing, exactly. So this is how he had like tricked her. So Joe had asked Julie like on that night to help him with one of his cases. He's like, I'm doing some like detective work and you have to help me. So he's like, you have to drive off base, this weird little dirt road, and make a payment to an informant. So she had the $150.
Okay.
So that's what was stolen, like with her purse.
So
like, they
he
didn't know.
literally sent her with the money to pay the people who were going to murder her.
Yes.
And then gave them the money, and then they
were like,
her.
yeah. He was like, oh, take it out of her purse or whatever.
Wow,
like,
that's
your payment.
fucking rude.
Even worse, when they showed up. So like, I don't know why she would have known these guys.
Sure.
But I don't know if she just realized what was going on. So while she was the uncles, when they confessed, while she was being stabbed to death, she was crying out in English, "I hate you, Joe. I hate you, Joe." So she knew he was behind it. She was like, if somebody's killing me, it's going to be my dickhead husband. Like, that is so gross.
Wow. I can't believe that.
Yeah. Sergeant Joe Snodgrass was sentenced to life in a military prison without parole, where he remains to this day.
Good.
Lucy was convicted, the mistress, was convicted by a court in the Philippines. She only served a year.
Okay.
And the two uncles also only served very short terms. So they're all like out.
Okay.
But this was the first case pretty much where digital evidence and forensics were put in like the same categories.
Okay.
This is a direct quote. Computer crime investigation was not a forensics discipline until we put those diskettes back together.
Yeah.
So this was kind of the marriage of crime investigation and forensics.
Okay.
Which I thought was really cool. And I loved the aspect of the case that all of these professionals are like, this cannot be done.
And just some guy with tape.
This little guy's like, I was just going to tape it back together. And it worked.
Yeah.
Like, that's amazing.
It's crazy. And that's pretty interesting because obviously now like computer forensics is a whole discipline with the advent of technology and just like how pervasive it is in everybody's lives.
This started it all.
That's very interesting.
One
That's
of my
crazy.
favies.
I love that.
Thanks.
Love it. So for my case this week, we are going to Lancashire, England.
Ooh.
In the town of Blackburn.
Cute.
Where in May 1948, 3-year-old June Ann Devaney has just been admitted to the Queen's Park Hospital with pneumonia.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I know. Now, at this point, she had been there for nearly 2 weeks already. So she was due to be discharged the following day.
Okay.
So she was like on the tail end of the pneumonia. And she was almost 4. I think she was 3 years and 11 months. So almost 4. Nurse Gwendolyn Humphreys was on duty and watching all the kids in ward CH3 for the evening. Since they were all asleep, she went from the ward to the kitchen to prep for breakfast in the morning. Now, this is, 48. So imagine like the old school wards with the old school nurses and the hats. And
bowls of porridge. So cute.
So she goes to the kitchen.
She's like, bye.
To make breakfast. Around 12:20 a.m., Humphreys hears crying, like a cry, coming from the ward. So she goes to check on the children just to see what's going on. At this point, she didn't see anything suspicious.
Yeah.
So she checked on the kids. Everything was good.
Definitely not weird to hear a baby cry in a children's ward.
Right. And it could be a chain reaction. Right. So she goes back to work.
Yeah.
There was this like veranda outside the ward. So she notices that there's a draft coming from the veranda door around 1:20 a.m.
Okay.
But she's, again, it's like, you know, I imagine it's like an older building. And so she's like,
it's probably got ghosts. She's like, the ghost opened the dang window again.
Doesn't really think too much about it. Closes the door. Is like, this is fine. Yeah. That is until she turns around and notices that one of the beds is empty. Okay. It was the bed belonging to June Ann Devaney. As Humphreys started looking around, she noticed adult-sized footprints seeming to come from someone in stocking feet that led to Devaney's cot. So it was like this highly waxed floor. Yeah. So it was like... boop, 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 adult footprints to the cot.
Creepy.
She also noticed that the drop side of the cot, so if you think in like cribs, there's always one side that drops down.
There used to be.
Yes. Is that not a thing anymore?
No, it's safety.
Oh, I mean, that makes sense.
Because kids will learn to do it by themselves and then they'll jailbreak. Yep.
They'll piece out and stick forks and plugs.
That's what I did. Well, not the last part, but I broke out of my crib as a kid like all the time.
Nice. So she notices that the drop side is still up, which means that Devaney was likely lifted out of the bed. Humphreys sort of makes this really quick panicked search around the ward before alerting other staff who also joined in the search. Approximately 30 minutes later, the staff gets in contact with police after like searching themselves. Yeah. And the police arrive around 1:55 a.m. Okay. So they immediately begin a search of they were looking at not only the hospital but at the grounds itself around the building. Around 3:16 a.m., Devaney's body was discovered near the boundary wall to the hospital, just 283 feet away from the ward. This is fair warning. This is probably the worst part of all of it. She was found face down in the grass with a torn nightdress that had been lifted to her waist and had numerous blood stains. The police surgeon summarized the injuries as, quote, there was a multiple fracture of the skull. Blood was exuding from the nose. There were several puncture wounds on the left foot. They might easily have been caused by fingernails gripping the left ankle. The injuries to the head were consistent with the head having been battered against a wall. It appears to me that the child was held by her feet and the head swung against the wall.
Jeez.
Yeah, so very violent.
Oh, poor baby.
Following an autopsy, it was determined Devaney had severe internal injuries consistent with rape. And they noted teeth marks on her buttocks. The hospital immediately became a crime scene. Yeah. And local police decided, which I think, in my head, I'm like, this was the right move. They decided to contact Scotland Yard.
Yes.
Bring in the big dogs. Yes. Because this is like a local police department.
Yeah, and I feel like that's so rare because they want to like solve it themselves.
Yeah.
But, like,
I think they realized they did not have...
That was a great decision.
I don't know if manpower is right. Like just the expertise.
Yeah, and the
to deal with something
outreach.
Like that.
Completely.
Yeah, so they bring in Scotland Yard to assist.
Good
in the investigation. Call. So the initial theory was that this rape and murder was committed by a local person. They had pretty early on received information from a taxi driver who had said that he had picked up a man with a local accent near the hospital the night of the crime. More investigation inside the children's ward of the hospital revealed a Winchester bottle. Do you know what a Winchester bottle is? It's like those old school brown medicine bottles that are like kind of rounded at the top, but they're like, you know what I mean? Like the classic hospital brown.
I immediately
glass
thought of like rifles.
Bottles. No. Well, it might be, honestly, might be made by the same company.
Oh, probably.
At that time.
Yeah.
But those are called Winchester bottles.
Oh, okay. I've thrifted a few of those. I
didn't know that either. I was like, I didn't know those had a name.
No.
I just thought they were like
medicine bottles.
Medicine bottles. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, how cool. That's cute.
So as they were searching the children's ward, they revealed this Winchester bottle, which was typically on a trolley at the end of the ward. The bottle was next to Devaney's cot, and it had been partially filled with sterile water. When investigators began looking at the footprints, they noticed that not only had the culprit removed his shoes before entering the ward, but he had gone from bed to bed before deciding to abduct Devaney, seemingly making a random choice.
That's awful.
Investigators immediately dusted the bottle for fingerprints and were able to pull several sets, giving authorities at least a little evidence to start with.
Right.
There wasn't
sure
much.
Other nurses and stuff on the ward had touched the bottle.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But like at least they were able to get that off. That's great.
Yeah. And of course, the first thing they did was compare all the fingerprints to
everybody
at the hospital. They didn't actually come back with a match.
Right.
To the bottle. Although they had, clearly they had some physical evidence, right? There wasn't really any leads.
Right.
Except for reports of a peeping Tom on the grounds that evening.
Ooh.
But they did find this gentleman, and he was also not a match to the fingerprints.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah. So investigators begin widening their search. They are trying to pin down any person who... so they went so wide on this one. They were trying to pin down any person who could have possibly had a reason to visit the ward within the prior 5 years.
Oh, geez.
Yes.
So anybody who's known anybody who's been hospitalized.
And this is partly for like alibis. They wanted to get alibis from people, and partly so they could compare the fingerprints.
Right.
And this included everyone from like hospital staff to workmen to like staff's boyfriends. To
I love that, but like what a lot of work.
Nurses. Yeah. All of which were eliminated following fingerprint comparison.
Dang.
Now, naturally, the police compared the prints to their own records, thinking maybe the perpetrator had previously committed a crime. But they didn't have any luck there.
Dang.
Either. Yeah, I know. So many fingerprint comparisons.
Jeez.
It was noted that one of the sets of fingerprints was well-defined and unbroken, indicating it was likely they belonged to a young man with no hard labor experience, which I thought was really interesting.
Hands. Yes.
This soft, voluptuous fingerprints.
They're like smelling it like, oh, it smells like expensive hand cream. It smells like Grey Poupon.
Yeah, right. Now, at this point, it had been about a week since the investigation started. And police knew they had to get creative to get anywhere. Much.
And I'm sure they were afraid of like, is this going to happen again?
Right.
Like,
yeah, because nobody really knew.
Yeah.
And it's such a heinous crime.
Right.
Like,
oh, poor little baby.
So they created a task force to attempt to fingerprint every male age 16 or older who lived or was in the vicinity of Blackburn between May 14th and 15th.
Wow. That's quite the task.
It is. And the town of Blackburn at the time had a population of approximately 123,000.
Oh my God.
Just to give you like a scale. Yes. So police, they told the public that they hoped everybody would cooperate, and they promised that the fingerprint records would be destroyed at the end of the investigation and that they were not going to be used to compare to any other case that they had.
That's kind of cool.
Right.
Well, that they say that.
No. I will, spoiler alert, they follow through on that
okay,
piece.
cool.
But I do find that interesting that they make it very clear, like, it is for this case specifically. We'll destroy everything afterwards. Please cooperate.
You know, I have like mixed feelings on all that kind of stuff, but like, I guess that's like a little like integrity, I guess.
Yeah.
That's nice.
But also, like, if you have like 122,999 people who happily give their fingerprints, and there's one person who's like, I'm not going to do that. Like,
yeah. Oh, completely.
Yeah, might do something.
I agree.
So starting May 23rd, police started this huge fingerprinting operation.
I can't even imagine.
They used a specifically developed card to capture the portions of the hand that they had printed for, which was the left forefinger, middle finger, ring finger, and part of the palm.
Okay.
So like if you're just grabbing pinky out.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
pinky out. It
that's
might have
another
been pinky
clue.
out.
He's fancy.
I didn't even think
He's
about
rich.
that until now, but yeah, it could be pinky out. The card also included basic identifying info, name, address, their equivalent. It's not called a social security number.
What a good idea.
Their equivalent of a social security number, as well as their stated whereabouts on the evening of the murder. So like it was like fingerprints, information, alibi, all on one card.
Wow.
That they had. Which I think it sounds like a lot to do. It is a lot to do. But at the same time,
what a good idea.
I think they did it efficiently.
A woman organized
this. Back.
I swear. I know the time period, like, no, but I swear, like, whoever the lead of Scotland
Yard
is,
baby.
He went home and, like, asked his wife and was like, what do I do? And she's like, I'll do it. Yeah. This is woman made. I don't care. I don't care.
True. You can take credit, but, like, here.
Yeah, I know.
This means you'll come home at 5 o'clock.
Yeah,
every
completely.
Night.
She's like, not going to the pubs. Get your ass home.
Oh, my God. So the mass fingerprinting operation would take about 2 months. They collected over 40,000 sets of prints from literally everyone on the electoral record.
Wow.
But they were still unable to find a match.
Stop it. Oh my God.
Now, if you noticed, it's worth noting the time period. This literally happened like a few years after the end of World War II.
Right.
Okay. So there were servicemen who were likely away from military service or that would not have been included in the electoral records. So police make an effort to identify these individuals using issued ration books.
Oh, okay.
And
God, what a lot of work.
I know.
Oh my
it's all legwork too. It is all legwork. And it's literally with no leads. They're like just trying to find a lead, which I think is crazy.
Needle in a haystack.
So looking at all of the servicemen and the ration books and stuff, they find an additional 200 men who had not been printed yet. So they start going after, I don't want to say going after, they start trying to find these servicemen to
tracking them down.
Right. This leads them to a man named Peter Griffiths. Now, Griffiths was a 22-year-old ex-serviceman who was living in Blackburn at the time. And when comparing he gave up his prints, by the way. They came to him and they were like, can we have your prints? And he's like, yeah, okay.
With all of these cases, it's like when he allowed them to search their house, they found 38 bodies. It's like, why'd you let him in there?
Well, I know. But is it more suspicious to be like, come on in, or to be like, you can't come in here, get a warrant?
See, I don't talk to cops.
I don't either.
So
I don't either. I'm like, I'm calling my attorney.
Yeah, me too. Well, I'm calling you.
Yeah, I'm not an attorney. I'll call an attorney. I'll call an attorney for you. So they compare Griffith's prints to the prints that they had, and they were an exact match. It was also determined that Griffith's niece was at the same hospital he abducted Devaney from, which I think kind of just made the connection with the hospital. The following day, authorities arrested Griffiths as he was leaving his home. He initially denied any involvement in the crime, but when confronted with the fingerprint evidence, Griffiths offered up a full confession of events that night.
Oh my God.
Right. Now, this is according to him. He had decided to have a night out drinking alone.
Oh, great.
And was at the pub until closing, by which time he had become severely intoxicated.
It'd be like that.
Right. So he decides to take a walk in an attempt to sober up a little bit when he sees this guy in a car that he stops and chats with this guy in this car. He says that the man noticed how drunk he was and offered to give him a ride. Not long after, the car stopped outside of Queen's Park Hospital, and it was at this point Griffiths decided to break in.
Oh.
He was like, I'm going to go break in that hospital.
Oh, okay. And that guy's like, bye. Have fun. Be safe.
I guess. And I'm wondering if that is the
taxi driver? I was thinking that too.
Or if the taxi driver picked him up afterwards.
Oh.
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
It's not totally clear to me.
Yeah.
He said he remembered being outside and finding an unlocked door, and he decided to take off his shoes and leave them outside the door. He recounted hearing a nurse in a nearby room humming to herself and deciding to grab the Winchester bottle as a weapon in case he was discovered.
Oh.
Which is not what I expected, because it only had sterile water in it.
How big is the bottle?
I mean, you've seen some of those brown bottles. They're like,
oh, okay.
and like the like rectangular or sometimes round.
I was thinking of like the little tiny ones.
No, they're like the big ones.
Got it. Okay.
And they're like the brown glass.
Because I was
like,
about to say like, all right.
Yeah.
But I see.
No, the brown
I see.
glass is like hefty glass.
That's
too.
very true. That's true. I was thinking of the tiny ones. You're right.
It's like, it was, I saw the pictures of the ones they took prints of, and I'm pretty sure they were the rectangular type, but they were probably like that.
Like a wine bottle.
Yeah, like that. This is probably like
a soda
6 to
bottle.
8 inches, maybe.
Yeah. Got it. Because I was like, I don't know, dude, but I see.
Yeah, no, you could definitely bludgeon somebody for sure. So he grabs the bottle. He then removes Devaney from her cot and leaves. Although he did not go into detail about the specific heinous acts he had committed, he did tell police he had murdered her in a fit of rage when the child started crying. He then returned home and crashed on the couch and slept like a fucking baby. And
what a piece of shit.
I know. And during this confession, it does not appear that he showed any remorse for the crimes committed. Pretty much blaming it on his intoxication.
Yeah.
Although he did apologize for his actions and expressed a wish to be hanged for his crimes. He was like, I need to be held accountable.
Same.
Which I'm not saying I respect in any sort of way, but like.
No, I know.
He.
Just like, fuck this guy.
He didn't have any remorse, but he's like, I know I'm probably going to get the death penalty and I fucking deserve it.
Yeah.
Griffiths was charged with murder. And pretty much after his initial statement and fingerprinting, refused to assist with any further investigation. So he didn't want to give up any DNA samples or swabs or like semen samples or hair or fiber or whatever. Doesn't want to. He was just like, you got my statement. I told you what happened.
Wow.
That's all you need.
Jerk.
I know. So investigators conducted a search of his house where they found a receipt for a suit that Griffiths had sold to a pawn shop. When they tracked that down,
oh my gosh,
they discovered bloodstains that matched the blood type of Devaney.
It's always those receipts.
And I can't believe they tracked it down at a pawn shop.
Me too.
Because like
nobody had bought the bloodstained suit.
No. And the turnover rate for even stuff like that is pretty high. So like,
definitely.
I'm surprised it was still there.
That's crazy. That's good forensics.
I know. I love the legwork on this one.
Me too.
They also found the fibers, on the suit that matched fibers that had been found on Devaney's body.
Gotcha.
They also found some on her clothing and a window ledge leading to the hospital.
Oh, this guy's just like shedding fibers.
There were also fibers pulled from a pair of socks that Griffiths owned that matched the fibers found in the footprints on the floor of the hospital ward.
Wow. Maybe the bloodstains had nothing to do with why he gave up the suit. He was like, this suit just keeps losing threads. I don't know what to do about it. I'm like a fibrous man.
And I gotta be honest, like, again, this is 1948. So like the forensic techniques are not the same as they are today, right? But even still, like being able to match all this stuff even to somewhat of certainty is like
crazy.
Yeah.
Good on him.
When it came time for Griffiths to go to trial in October 1948, so this happened, what did I say?
Pretty
it was
quickly.
May of that year, I think. October, he was going to trial.
Wow.
He enters a plea of not guilty.
Fuck off.
Obviously, prosecutors brought all the forensic evidence that they had collected and had the lead investigator testify to its legitimacy, especially the fingerprints. Defense counsel opted to not cross-examine any of the expert witnesses the prosecution brought forth. The defense was pretty upfront that their strategy for the trial wasn't not that they were trying to prove that he wasn't guilty, but instead they were just arguing for his life. They did not want him to receive the death penalty. They want him to get life in prison.
Yeah.
So the plea that had been entered was not guilty by reason of insanity. And they brought an expert in to testify that he was in the early stages of schizophrenia. Now, according to the testifying witness, Dr. Alistair Robertson Grant.
Cool name. Alistair.
Ooh. He had also treated Griffith's father for the same condition, saying he had been admitted to a mental hospital for a period of 6 months.
Wow.
Of course, they didn't call it schizophrenia at the time.
Right,
They called
I was
it
gonna
split
say.
mind, I think, is what it was referred
and it's
to
the
as.
40s, so who knows? He might have just been like annoying, and they were like, to the
fact
mental
that they're
hospital
like,
with you.
This guy has a split mind is kind of amazing because even then that was not a widely accepted diagnosis.
Right. No.
Yeah.
They were like, you have demons in your blood and such.
Yeah, right. Do
Go to
cocaine
church.
about it. Now, according to Cottontown, quote, the doctor claimed that the defendant was aware of what he was doing, but did not fully appreciate that what he was doing was wrong. However, Grant later admitted that after hearing Griffith's account of events, he was of sound mind. This claim was further rebutted by Dr. F.H. Brisby, a medical officer from Liverpool Prison who had observed the accused since his admission the 14th of August and concluded that he was sane when the crime was committed, end quote.
Well, there you go. Sane and a dick.
So in total, the trial lasted 2 days.
Oh my God.
The jury took 23 minutes to render a verdict. Griffiths was found guilty of Devaney's murder and sentenced to death. Mm-hmm. There was no appeal from Griffiths. And so he had trial in October. In November 1948, about a month after he was convicted, Griffiths was hanged at HM Prison, Liverpool.
Oh, wow. They're not fucking around.
No.
You're not sitting on death row in England.
Well,
They're
he was
hanging your ass.
He told them, I have zero intention of filing an appeal.
Yeah.
And that's like binding. I think when you're talking about death penalty cases, if you don't like file your intention to appeal, they're just like, all right,
okay,
like we
got
other things to do. We got to move on.
Got it. Yeah. See, I don't know if it's an American thing, but I always feel like people sit on death row for like a bazillion years.
Yeah.
The next month they're like, oh no, we're getting you.
Yeah. And part of it too, especially now in the US, is there's like an expiration date on the time that you have to appeal. So they have to wait until that expiration date happens before they can move forward with anything.
That makes sense.
And then they have to make sure they have the drugs to do it. And then they have to make sure those drugs are still legal to use.
Right. Whole thing.
It's a whole thing.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Following the end of the trial, but before the execution, authorities destroyed all of the fingerprint cards collected in a public mass pulping at like a pulp mill. Complete with journalists to record the occasion.
That's
so they
kind of cool.
Kept to their word. This was the first time a mass fingerprinting exercise was used to solve a murder in the UK, setting a precedent for future investigations. So this became, for a little while, somewhat of a practice.
Wow.
I will say since then, it has been used a couple of times, just like a mass fingerprinting, to mixed reaction.
Yeah.
People now are like, you can't just fingerprint everybody.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of an invasion of privacy, and I am pretty much in that camp. Mm-hmm. Like, I wouldn't give any of that up unless you had a warrant, frankly.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I kind of get it from the police investigation side, because if you don't have any leads, it's like just trying to get something. So I don't know that in recent years it's been used as a technique.
Yeah.
But for a while, that was 1948, like I said. So for a while, they were like, all right, no leads. We're just going to fingerprint everybody.
And like we were saying earlier, that used to be like if they found like your fingerprint and it matched to you, that was it. Now fingerprint sciences are so different. Like a lot of it, like I've heard they're like investigating old cases and stuff and being like, oh, actually, that fingerprint doesn't matter. Throw that out. Now
that you have like touch DNA and like all of that kind of stuff, like it's become more complicated for sure. But more accurate.
Yeah, completely. Too. So it's all for a good thing, but wow.
Is that crazy?
Crazy.
Thought you would really like that one.
I do. Those are my favorite kinds of things.
Yeah, it's a sad case.
It is sad that poor little baby
child was
her name June
and
June.
Devaney.
Sorry, June.
Yeah, but interesting techniques.
Very interesting techniques.
Before you decide to run off and join the FBI, why don't you check out this podcast?
Hi, I'm Lainey, host of the new podcast, We're All Just Pretending. It's a podcast that has elements of Dear Abby with a twist of Post Secret. Every episode, I'll read listener questions and provide advice and insight as a friend. My own pod friends will even join in and offer their advice on parenting, relationships, and even give you really bad advice on purpose. Since we all have secrets to share, there'll also be a segment focusing on letting the skeletons out of your closet. If you're looking for advice or want to share a secret, head to allpretendingpod.com. And remember, we're all just pretending here.
This has been the Bad Taste Crime Podcast.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm jumping forward a little bit. Do you have anything to say before we close out?
Make sure that if you're going to commit crimes, wear non-fibrous socks.
First of all, don't commit crimes. Don't commit crimes is just a blanket statement.
I just
There's
love the idea of him trailing fuzz behind him. Like, I know it's not like that. And
I imagine it is like homemade knitted socks from like mom.
Oh, yeah, completely. He's like, fuck
that
you,
he
Mom.
got while he was at war.
It was all your fault. She's like, I made them with love.
Yeah. If you enjoyed this episode, you can find more episodes just like this at badtastepodcast.com. But I think that's all we got for you today.
Yeah.
All right. Our sound and editing is by Tiff Fullman. Our music is by Jason Zakshevsky, the Enigma. Yay! This has been the Bad Taste Crime Podcast. We will see you in 2 weeks. Goodbye.
Bye.
10 young women and left their bodies on the hillsides along the highway.
It was as if a wave of evil washed over this town.
We are all evil in some form or another.